there was a big move on to do so-called psychosurgery, different types of brain surgery to ameliorate mental illness. There was two doctors, Freeman and Watts, in Washington, St. Elizabeth. I think it was Dr. Freeman that really insisted, really perfected the technique. They'd known that if you did a lobotomy called prefrontal lobotomy, you cut the connections between the frontal cortex and the thalamus. They'd sometimes have done that for pain, I mean to ameliorate pain as well, but they also found it would alter moods and whatnot. So they were trying to find a way to do this without, these were psychiatrists, these were not surgeons, these were psychiatrists. So he devised an instrument, they called it an ice pick, and it was steel and it was tapered just like an ice pick, but it was graduated in centimeters. Selected the patients, had interviews with the families, interviews with the patients, and selected 4 people he was going to do the operation on. He called it a leucotomy, but he had visiting psychiatrists from Memphis, from several states in here, and at the time Fort Roos was one of the biggest psychiatric hospitals in the VA system, anywhere in the world. So all those people came, and this was a real demonstration, but it was real creepy. The day he picked to do the procedure, it was rainy and thunders and thunder and lightning and dark clouds everywhere. He used electroshock as anesthesia because everybody is real confused after they get a real electric shock. They're not, sometimes you go to sleep, sometimes but they're real confused and don't remember anything. Then he would slide his instrument over under the eyelid and over the eyeball. The orbital plate right behind the eyeball is very thin, and you can break through, and right behind that is the frontal lobe. And then he'd advance it so many centimeters, so he's graduated in centimeters, and he'd so many centimeters in, so many up, down, this way, that way. He'd make his cuts in the brain and stop. And he'd take the patient out, still confused, you know, and they were never made any better. There wasn't much sterile business going on, incidentally. I mean, it was really, but everybody was in that room that afternoon with the atmosphere, with the clouds, the rain, the thunder, and the procedure going on. It was just like a Charles Addams cartoon. And everybody was really almost hysterical around the supper table that night. You'd see these little twitters and hysterical laughs and whatnot. And the doctor of research that was appointed to do this procedure, he spent the next 3 months washing his hands. My dad took me to New Orleans and introduced me to an old doctor named Matas. And I suppose I could have gone to Tulane and maybe gotten free tuition, but I didn't want to trade on the name, and I was comfortable with Arkansas, so I came to the University of Arkansas. It was my first choice. They had a quota system that required the entrance to be from the state. We had people from New Jersey, from New York, Brooklyn. They got into our medical school right after the war, right after World War II, because they had relatives that lived in the state, and that's what they gave as their home address. So there was a lot of anxiety about getting in medical school in that particular time. Actually, I got into medical school 2 weeks late. I interviewed with Dr. Paul Day, who was head of the biochemistry department, and Dr. Jeff Banks, who was head of the anatomy department. Some fella had decided he didn't want to go to medical school after all, and he just one day just packed everything up and left. Didn't tell anybody or anything, so there was a slot to fill, and that's how I got into medical school. That was a whole demonstration in neuro and gross anatomy behind. So I had to learn a language every specialty area has their own language. I had to learn the language of medicine and learn what they were doing in the anatomy lab on the dissections and whatnot. And I spent the first Christmas between semesters making up that one dissection. I had no Christmas at all. It was it was all taken up. Yeah, I liked it. I went to the old school at, I say old school, it's not the oldest one. I went to old school in MacArthur Park on McAlmond Street, which is now the law school for ULR. But at the time we had the building for the medical school, and then we had a little clinic adjoining called Isaac Folsom Clinic, and then we had the hospital. Jeff Banks was, that was considered the jawbreaker class in freshman year. When you went to freshman class, biochemistry and gross anatomy were the two courses that flunked people out. Later they built a dormitory and student union and named for him. He was an excellent teacher, but he was tough. He was very tough. He knew, I don't know how he knew, but he knew everything everybody did when they were away from the school. And he could tell the person that he'd just drift by while you were working on the dissection. You could ever see just sort of drift by and mumble something about where you'd been. Did you like it? Did you like the steak that you had? Did you? And he knew details. And I don't know how he did this, but it was uncanny. I thought I'd sneak out once and go to the movies. And I went to the movies and I sat sort of in the back, and right next, about two seats down, was Jeff Banks. So I don't know how he could manage that sort of stuff, but he did. I don't even remember what the movie is now. I have no idea.